They uninvited me from my own mother's birthday because they thought I wasn't presentable enough next to my sister's new boyfriend. What happened next shocked everyone and changed our family forever. 3 weeks later, their power, water, and internet were all cut off on my mom's birthday. And not a single one of them saw it coming. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm 31 and live in a small but cozy place about 45 minutes north of Portland. My life's pretty simple. I wake up at 6:30, brew a strong cup of French roast, and listen to weather reports while I drive a short 8-minute commute to work. I co-founded a modest but growing clean tech startup with my best friend from college. It's not flashy, but we're doing good work: solar microgrids, sustainable home energy systems, that sort of thing. My family doesn't really get it. They think I fix HVAC units or screw in solar panels all day. And honestly, I've never tried to correct them. Not because I'm ashamed, far from it. I just learned a long time ago that trying to explain myself to them is like shouting into a void. A disinterested, slightly judgmental void. It's been 2.5 years since I last heard from them. No calls. No texts. Not even a passive-aggressive comment on a Facebook post. I used to think family was the one thing that could survive anything. But I was wrong. Because 2.5 years ago, everything fell apart over a birthday party. It was about 3 weeks before Mom's 62nd. I just cleared my schedule and blocked off a few vacation days from work. I was planning to head down early, help with the decorations, and bring her favorite lemon elderflower cake from that boutique bakery she used to rave about. I called home that morning while sipping my coffee, ready to let her know I'd be coming. But my dad answered. "Hey, I'll be in town a few days early," I said casually. "Figured I'd help out with anything you might need." There was a pause, just long enough to feel like a warning. Then he said, voice low and embarrassed, "Danny, maybe it's better if you don't come this year." I blinked. "What? Why not?" He cleared his throat like he was about to recite something rehearsed. "Your sister's bringing her boyfriend this time. He's, polished. A regional manager. Speaks well. Presents well. And your job, well, it's just hard to explain to people." It took me a full second to register what he meant. But then it hit me. Hard. "Are you saying I'm embarrassing?" He didn't deny it. Didn't backtrack. He just said, cold and clipped, "If you still insist on coming, don't call me your father." And then he hung up. I just sat there. Coffee in one hand. The other curled so tightly around my phone it ached. Silence all around me. The TV wasn't on. There were no cars on the street. Just my father's words echoing in my head like a gunshot in an empty room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened my bank app. I needed to see something. For over 2 years, I'd been covering their utility bills, power, water, internet, without ever being asked. My mom had hinted once, gently, that things were tight. That a few months of help would mean a lot. I took her at her word. Set up recurring payments. Never told them. Never missed a month. I scrolled through the transaction history. Every month, $393.48. Over 2 years? $9,843.52. Nearly 10 grand. Quietly paid. No questions asked? And now I was the shame of the family. I didn't need answers. I just needed boundaries. That morning, I canceled every payment. Not to be cruel, but because it was the first time in my life I realized that if I didn't protect my dignity, nobody else would. And on the afternoon of my mom's birthday, as guests arrived and the family posed for group pictures, without me, the house suddenly went dark. No power. No running water. No Wi-Fi. My mom's first message didn't ask if I was okay. It read, "Danny, the power's out. Please handle it." Then, "No water either. What's going on?" And from Jessica, "Internet's down. Guests are here. Please fix ASAP." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. That silence, that absence they so easily chose, had finally answered everything for me. The strange thing was, I didn't even feel angry. Not anymore. I just sat there, turning the cold mug of coffee in my hands, letting the fog settle outside my apartment window. It was like I was watching the end of a show I'd already seen too many times, one where I knew exactly how each scene would play out. First, they panicked. Then they called. And when I didn't pick up, they sent messages. Pleading, annoyed, guilt-tripping. But none of them asked the one question that actually mattered. Are you okay? Instead it was, fix this. Power off. Water shut down. Internet gone. All within minutes of the party starting. And none of them could figure out why. 3 weeks ago, I cancelled all their bills, right after my dad told me not to come home if I wanted to call him Dad. The math wasn't difficult. But to them, I'd always just been reliable. The one who handled things. Quietly. Without credit. Without complaint. Until I wasn't. By 6 p.m., the messages started shifting tone. From my mother, a long one about how disappointed she was, how this wasn't the time to be selfish. Jessica chimed in, calling me childish, and telling me I'd embarrassed Mom in front of the entire family. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because nothing I could say would be heard by people who already decided I was invisible. At 6:17 p.m., Aunt Lisa called. The only relative who ever treated me like more than a coat rack. Her voice came through on a grainy video call, yellow kitchen light behind her, familiar cracked backsplash in view. You're not going to pay it, are you? She asked gently. I shook my head. No, I said. Not this time. She gave me a long look, then slowly nodded. But the background noise caught my attention, footsteps, arguing, the clink of forks on plates. Then a voice, my mother's, sharp and unfiltered. Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On my birthday, of all days. Another voice. It's just bills. What kind of man gets petty over some bills? And then Jessica's voice. He even picked up the call. Unbelievable. Mom's been crying all day, and he doesn't even care. Still, I didn't say anything. I just listened. Their words, so casual, so sure, cut more deeply than any insult ever could. And then the screen shifted. A new face leaned into the frame. I blinked, recognizing the man almost immediately. Trim beard, well-fitted blazer, nervous smile. Hey, boss, he said. Everything froze. That was him, Jessica's boyfriend. The one they all wanted to impress. The same guy my father said was important, respectable, and presentable. The one they didn't want me standing next to. I was his boss. He worked at my company, recently transferred from our northern branch. We'd exchanged emails. He'd sent me 2 quarterly reports. And now, here he was, at my mother's birthday party, in a house paid for with my money, surrounded by people who disowned me, calling me boss. You could feel the room behind him go still. Then he spoke again, louder this time, addressing the entire kitchen. In case it's not clear, I work at Novagrid. Mr. Daniel is one of the co-founders. Silence. A pause so thick it nearly made the camera glitch. My father, my sister, my mother, every single one of them stood in stunned, breathless silence. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just met his eyes and said calmly, "Hope the introduction goes well." Then I ended the call. And for the first time in years I slept like a child. When I was 16, my high school English teacher once pulled me aside after class and asked why I never volunteered to read aloud or answer questions. I shrugged and mumbled something about not liking the sound of my own voice. She paused, looked at me, and said something I've never forgotten. It's not that you're quiet. It's that you've been trained not to take up space. I remember laughing awkwardly and brushing it off. But deep down, I knew she was right. I'd spent my entire childhood stepping aside so others could shine. My sister Jessica got the piano lessons, the expensive French camp, the drama club. She was the radiant centerpiece of every room we entered. And me? I was the background music. The one who held jackets and took the group photo, not the one in it. It never used to bother me. At least, that's what I told myself. I thought if I just kept being reliable, one day they'd look at me and say, "We see you." But they never did. And after what happened at Mom's birthday, I realized they never planned to. The morning after the call with Aunt Lisa and the revelation, I expected chaos. What I didn't expect was the silence. No texts. No emails. No voicemails. Just a vacuum of sound that told me the entire house was processing what had happened and didn't know what to say. But it didn't stay quiet for long. At 10:42 a.m., my inbox chimed. A message from Hudson, the boyfriend. Subject line, apologies. I didn't know. The first line read, "I had no idea you were Jessica's brother. I've always admired you at the company." He went on to explain that he hadn't connected the dots. That he'd never seen my last name and hers together. That he was deeply embarrassed for not realizing the dynamic. And then he said something that floored me. "I'll be ending this relationship. It's not the environment I want to attach myself to. Thank you for not putting me on the spot last night." I sat back, phone in hand, staring at the message. Not with satisfaction, but with clarity. Not everything needed a confrontation. Some truths unfolded on their own when the mask slipped just enough. I typed back one line. "That's your decision, Hudson. Just remember, how people treat strangers often reveals how they'll treat you once the novelty fades." And that was it. But less than an hour later, Jessica texted me. First it was, "You talked to Hudson, didn't you? He won't return my calls." Then, "Please don't do this. Don't ruin this for me." And finally, "You're his boss. If you tell him to stay, he will. Please just talk to him." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I stood by my window, watching the fog lift over the street like a veil. And then I wrote back. "Hudson didn't leave because of me. He left because he saw who you were when you weren't trying to impress someone." Minutes later, her final message arrived. "I know I messed up. I'll change. Just please, this once." But this time, the words didn't move me. Because the apology didn't come when it should have. It came after the collapse. After the truth became public. After the shine wore off. And sometimes, that's the clearest sign of all, that they were never sorry for what they did. Only sorry they got caught. I didn't reply. I just deleted the message, quietly and without ceremony. Then I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and stepped back into my life. It was a Friday afternoon when I pulled into my driveway and saw them, my parents, standing at the front door with small suitcases, jackets folded over their arms like they just landed from a long trip. They didn't call. They didn't text. They just showed up. I knew right away this wasn't a visit. This was a mission. I didn't say anything. Just unlocked the door, stepped aside, and let them in. The house was quiet, sunlight warming the kitchen tiles through half-drawn blinds. The smell of chamomile still lingered from the tea I'd brewed that morning. It wasn't tense. But it wasn't warm either. We sat. My mother spoke first. Her voice was soft, full of practiced sorrow. She said they'd been thinking that maybe things got out of hand. She clasped her hands like she was praying, murmured how they never meant for things to get so fractured. My dad chimed in after a long pause. His voice wasn't quite apologetic, more strategic. "We're family, Danny," he said, like it was a reminder I'd forgotten. "Family helps each other. We raised you, put food on the table, sent you to school." I didn't react. I didn't even blink. I just watched them, waiting. Because I knew the apology was just the opening act. And then came the real show. "If you could maybe send us around $2,000 a month," my mother said, eyes hopeful. "Nothing crazy. Just some support. It's not much for someone like you." There it was. The request. Not an apology. Not a conversation. A transaction. A $sign gift wrapped as reconciliation. I took a slow breath, leaned back, and asked the only question that really mattered. What about Jessica? How much is she contributing? The air thickened. My father shifted in his seat. My mother blinked, then gave the same excuse I'd heard since I was a teenager. Her job's been unstable lately. And the breakup, well, she's not herself right now. I gave a quiet chuckle. Not a mean one. Just the kind you let out when someone tells a story that no longer works on you. I looked them both in the eye. If Jessica agrees to contribute $2,000 a month, I'll do the same. No more, no less. They stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. And if you want me to carry the full amount, I continued, I'll need something in writing, a legal agreement stating that the house will be transferred to me after you pass. Silence. Heavy and thick, like wet wool. My father stood abruptly. His palms slammed the table, tipping a teacup that spilled down the edge in a slow, steaming stream. You're setting conditions? For your own parents? He shouted. After everything we've done for you? You want to nickel and dime us like we're strangers? His voice was a roar. The kind that echoes off hardwood floors and walls painted in false nostalgia. I didn't flinch. Didn't move. When he finally paused to breathe, I stood. Calm. Steady. I think you both should leave. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even anger. It was just the truth, delivered the way truth should be, clean and without clutter. They didn't speak again. My mother looked like she might cry, but no tears came. They gathered their bags, the weight of their own silence following behind them like fog as the door shut. Click. Just like that. That was the last time I saw them in my home. It's been 2 years since that quiet moment at my front door, the last time I saw them standing there, clutching suitcases like peace offerings with strings attached. They walked out of my house that day, but really, I think they'd left me long before. They never called after that. No birthday wishes. No holiday messages. Not even a courtesy. Hope you're doing okay. I didn't block them. I didn't change my number. I just waited. And what I learned in that stillness is what most people never admit until it's too late. The people who love you only when you're useful were never really loving you in the first place. My life didn't collapse when they left. It unfolded. I got back to work. I took on a new solar development project in Colorado. I hired a few incredible engineers, young, ambitious, respectful. I started going on longer walks, adopted a goofy golden retriever named Kip, and finally booked that solo trip to Iceland I'd been putting off for 5 years. I found peace in the absence. And I realized something else. I had been writing myself out of my own life for decades, making myself small so others could shine, paying the bills behind the scenes, offering help before anyone asked. Not because I was generous, but because I was afraid that if I didn't, I'd disappear altogether. Turns out, disappearing was exactly what I needed to do to be seen. I haven't heard from Jessica since that final text. The boyfriend, Hudson, did send a note a few months later. It was brief. He told me he'd found a new role in another division, wanted a clean slate, and had learned a lot from how I handled things. I appreciated that. We never spoke about my family again. And my parents? Well, 6 months after they left my house, my mom tried sending me a handwritten card. No return address. Just a folded note that read, "Your father says he won't apologize." I tried. I didn't respond. But I kept it. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of what it means when someone apologizes just to avoid blame, not because they understand what they did. That was the last I ever heard from either of them. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret cutting ties. Wouldn't it be better to forgive and move on? Isn't family everything? But that's the thing, they were never cut. There were no harsh words, no permanent deletions. I just stopped offering myself up like a sacrificial son every time they felt a little discomfort. I stopped being their bank, their fixer, their fallback plan. I became someone who mattered even when I wasn't paying for the lights. And if there's one thing I hope someone out there hears in all this, it's this. You are allowed to stop showing up for people who only remember you when something needs to be fixed. You are allowed to rewrite your role in your own life. You are allowed to be the person who walks away, not in anger, but in clarity. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's a quiet life, well lived. Without them,